Samir Arora, founder and fund manager at Helios Capital. It's always a pleasure and great to have you with us. What does 2023 hold for India? India was the outperformer in that we were up at an index level 4%, whereas the US indices were pounded with 20% losses, 30% losses. Should we continue the good run here?
Well, we should have a decent enough run to be happy ourselves. In the sense, it's possible this year, let's say that China goes up more because people think it's a rebound. But India itself will also do well in that situation. And if the rest of the world does badly, then we will surely outperform. Overall, I think this year I am starting in my mind on a positive note, because if I see the current issues, mostly related to US inflation and now maybe the COVID in China, the US inflation thing has been going on for quite some time. And in the next 2-3 months, I think by March, they would have finished their hikes and then they would pause for a long time, maybe the whole of this year. But at least it won't be hopefully incrementally negative news. And the China COVID situation, unless it happens to be some variant which is much more scarier than what we have seen, then we have seen this kind of a thing in India and previously in Europe and many other places where it'll run itself out in 2-3 months. And then there'll be massive unleashing of Chinese consumption and travel and all the things that we have seen in other markets. So I think plus minus 2-3 months, both these things would have played themselves out. And therefore, I think this year, at the end of the year, will be higher than today.
Samir, what about that India versus China factor? We had a good, year in 2022. China was behind us. Suddenly, that reopened trade, valuations, etc. Are you in that camp that believes that China will outperform us?
So China, it's already up some 30% from the bottom in October. And let us say it outperforms, which, sometimes what happens is, let's say you are doing Infosys versus Satyam, and then Satyam has a scam and the stock falls 80%. But then for the next few weeks, normally the Satyam would have outperformed after hitting some 10 rupees from a starting price of 180. It doesn't matter much to a long-term this thing. I don't think in the long term China will outperform. But let us say that there is some possibility that people, because they have put so much money into China in the last 10-15 years or whatever, they won't easily quit and they'll want to play one more round. So even let them play. I don't think it'll be so much at the cost of India. It'll be that, okay, the overall basket has gone up. That is, say, the emerging market basket or Asian basket or whatever, but mostly the way they call it, emerging market basket. And then India may underperform a little, doesn't matter. Actually, in the longer term, I don't think it will. But, when you fall a lot, the rebound can be, quite sharp. Who knows?
Okay. Yeah, but really comparing them to Satyam is taking it.
Dramatize it and explain it to an Indian boy.
No. Most interesting. Most interesting. But calling that big nation a scam is.
Historical premiums you're not supposed to see.
No, I take your point. Yeah. No, I take your point that, when you're losing after having invested in 1998 or something, that might bite. I take your point completely. So a bit of a rebound is...
My point is that people say India is trading at a premium to China and this is a record high. That is not because both these countries were performing and then after some time you realize, the Indian market seems to have massively outperformed. It is because China had specific policy issues, COVID issues, whatever issues, and therefore it fell. So it is one-to-one with that. And not so much that both the markets were naturally performing and then suddenly somebody's betting on mean reversal.
Fair enough. Take your point. Now let me come to within India itself. The big bet that everyone had was financials, and they have, obviously fructified. Do we continue to play? That seems to be the consensus. Every brokerage report speaks about financials yet again. We continue to play that bet?
We continue to play that bet, and because I saw your previous interview saying is the consensus the way to do it, then I said, what will I answer if she asks me? And the point is, if you look at the tech sector in the US for the last 7, 8, 10 years, every year you knew Google will do well and Amazon will do well, and they continue to do well for 7, 8 years till they didn't. But I think India, the situation is that this is clearly on a relative basis one of the better sectors, not just now, literally forever. Broadly talking about the private sector, this thing, like HDFC HDFC Bank, Kotak Bank, even Axis, ICICI broadly have done very well, even in long term. So yeah, that sector will do well. Also, if you say separately that the risk today is that whether the US problems are completely over, whether the EU problems are over, which means the IT sector, which is facing that market or that economies. So I would think a locally oriented sector, which is financial, is better even from that angle.
Okay.
All right, Samir, but what about HDFC Twins? A couple of those names, Kotak Mahindra Bank. 2022 was a bit of an off year for them. You expect them to get their mojo back in 2020?
HDFC was not an off year. Now it was up 11% or something.
7%, yeah, 7 to 8%.
7, 10.5, whatever, something, but it was in line with the market or a little ahead.
Yeah.
So actually, at least after 2 years of underperformance, did not underperform the market or mostly anybody's NAV this year. Last year, that. I would think HD. So one more thing is that when we say that the world is overweight and it's a consensus bet, the financial sector itself, that is excluding for the foreigners HDFC Bank, which is still zero in the index, and which is now maybe 5% of the market in absolute. If you do say 100 odd billion by whatever 2.5, 3 trillion market cap, so that 5% underweight is what makes the people feel that they're overweight. In reality, they may not be that much overweight if HDFC Bank had its rightful share in the index. Okay. We are going to bet on that. We have the 3 banks, HDFC, ICICI, State Bank in nearly same number. And we also have over the last 4-5 months, because we sold off IT in August or so, we have Axis Bank also now. So we have 4 banks and there are only 4 or 5 banks.
I just had one follow-up to the point you were making earlier, where you said you've sold off on IT and you're holding on to some banks. But, I don't remember the last time when you had an opportunity to buy some of these large cap IT names 30-40% cheaper, right? Don't you think that at least you should start nibbling into these names, or are you still very cautious?
Nibbling we might do. The point is, right now we have 0. But nibbling we might do. But the thing is that these guys have to still properly disappoint us. The stock price is one thing. But right now they are not. I think from this quarter, they will start talking about lower numbers and stuff like that. So far, they've been saying that we will get this project and we'll get cost-related projects and other things. But if you look at the US companies, you look at them in cloud, in security, in everything else, these business software like Salesforce, every one of them is having slowdown and the stocks are down, whereas and then EU and then UK. So I think that I may nibble, but I won't nibble before March, April, when we start thinking about them giving guidance for the year. They are not going to do anything great in Jan for me to feel that I have missed out. Plus, I'm not sitting on cash. So it's a relative trade I'm playing, right? That I've even bought Paytm, by the way. So I bought Zomato I had. So point is, it's not, we are just betting on a relative thing that which one can go up 10% more than the other.
Okay, now this is telepathy. Huh? You spoke about Zomato. I was going to ask you that. In your Twitter, you had mutual funds mangoing Mafi from their investors for investing in several of the IPOs. Is it comeback time at all? If you have Paytm, would you also go to the others, Nykaa, PB Fintech, Zomato, all of them?
Zomato we bought before. Zomato we bought last, 4-5 months ago, whatever the June quarter. Paytm was after the last quarter. So, no, right now we have only these 2, but we bought a few IPOs ourselves. These new IPOs, which are all down, I think one of them is not down. Fusion is not down, I think. But UP Parts and Fusion, but these are all like plus minus 0, because they're just very new IPOs anyway. So they've not had a chance to go down in case they have to. Hopefully they don't.
Okay. The big theme, like we have just discussed, was financials. Is there any sunrise theme? Today morning, many people spoke about metals.
Metals doesn't fit our big picture theme in our life because we have never been able to do well. So when we feel that the theme has done very well and is irritating me, then I'll buy a little and then it'll stop performing. So we don't want to stage yet.
So leave us with one big idea for 2023. Something you're nosing around and may pounce on.
No. That way, our thing is very simple, that we buy 20 stocks and bet that the pool will do well without exactly knowing whose turn it is next. So the best example to see that is, if you see in 2021 December, did anybody say that by Varun Beverages we turned out to be up 125%, or Lemon Tree turned out to be up 80%? Nobody knew. Nobody can imagine the extent to which stocks can do well. So my one point idea on which I'm going to do a talk is, people think that if they buy an idea, that if they have not done well, if they haven't researched it to the 100% and therefore are not willing to own less than 5%, they may have not done enough work. Sometimes the serendipity works, sometimes the fact that stats work, that some 30-35% of the stocks do very well relative to the market. And you have to try and get a larger part of your portfolio there without exactly knowing whose turn it is next. How could you have imagined that Indian hotels will be up 70% in a year? And if you believe that you will only buy stocks where you believe they'll go up 70%, you would never have bought these 3 stocks.
Yeah.
But when you 2% like we did, that was enough. It didn't matter that we did not buy 10, because we never imagined that these stocks could be up so much, so fast in a bad year otherwise. That is the trick.
That's a great lesson. Serendipity also works. That also indicates a very humble lesson, that we should be prepared for these accidents.
Not accidents,
pleasant ones. Pleasant surprises. Okay. Samir, have a great 2023. Thank you very much for starting it for us with Ilan.